Hi everyone, welcome back. In this lecture, we'll see how to use ChatGPT to create the content for Dockerfile and Docker Compose file. So let us say we have a requirement to Dockerize our Spring Boot application. Then we need to create a Dockerfile and Docker Compose file, isn't it? So instead of manually writing the content for Dockerfile and Docker Compose file, we can take the help from ChatGPT and we can tell ChatGPT to generate the content for Dockerfile and Docker Compose file. Okay. So here is the prompt that I have created. So we can use this prompt to tell ChatGPT to quickly generate the content for Dockerfile and Docker Compose. So here is a prompt. Act as a senior Java developer and Docker expert. We are assigning roles to ChatGPT so that ChatGPT can create the content based on the roles. Next, I want to containerize a Java Spring Boot application with MySQL using Docker. Generate a complete Dockerfile and Docker Compose YML file that works together seamlessly. So here basically we are telling ChatGPT that we have a Java Spring Boot application that connects with the MySQL database and we want to Dockerize our Java Spring Boot application. So please create the content for Dockerfile and Docker Compose YML file that works together seamlessly. Next, here is our app setup. So we need to provide the context for the ChatGPT so that ChatGPT can generate the content accordingly, isn't it? So here we have application that is built using Java, Spring Boot and Maven. And again, I have mentioned the version over here, 3.5. But you can use any version of Spring Boot like Spring Boot 3.5, Spring Boot 4 and etc. And here also I have mentioned Java version 21, but you can use any version of Java. Next, it connects to the MySQL database and uses Spring Data GPA to communicate with the database. Next, here is our requirement. Create the Docker file that should use the base image Eclipse Termine 21 JDK. You can use Java version over here based on your requirement. If you are using Java 25, you can replace 21 with 25. Next, build the app using Maven. Expose port 8080. Use multi-stage build. Like in stage 1, build the jar using Maven. Stage 2, copy the jar and run it using java-jar command. So just create the instructions based on these requirements in a Docker file. And then Docker Compose YML file. So we are telling ChatGPT to define two services, one for the app, another for DB. And set up the MySQL container. Use this MySQL 8 image and define the environment variables and avoid the hard-coded values. Configure the app container and it should link to the DB service. Set the environment variables or properties to connect to the MySQL via DB. Use depends on property because the app services depends on DB. Expose port 8080 on host. Alright, so this is our requirement to create the content for Docker Compose YML file. Well, if you don't specify the requirements in the prompt, then ChatGPT may assume different and it may create the different content. Okay, so the content may not meet your requirements. So make sure that you give the requirements in the prompt so that ChatGPT can look into your requirements and generate the content accordingly. Next, additional expectations. Ensures the app reads DB settings from application.properties file using container-friendly values. And then make sure the setup runs with a single Docker Compose command. Provide commented output with explanation for each section in a both file. We are asking ChatGPT to add the comments to each instruction in both the files. This is the simple prompt that can tell ChatGPT to generate the content for Docker and Docker Compose files. Okay, now again we no need to customize this prompt because there are no placeholders. We can directly use this prompt in the ChatGPT. Next, let us copy this prompt and go to the free version of ChatGPT. Click on New Chat, paste the prompt, and then submit the prompt. Now let us quickly go through the response of the ChatGPT. Here is a Docker file and this is the content of Docker file. And we told ChatGPT to add the comments to each instruction in the Docker file. That is what ChatGPT added over here. And again, we have told ChatGPT to use multi-stage build. That's why you can see stage 1. This will build the application using Maven, and this is the stage 2 to run the jar file. If you don't want multi-stage build, then you can simply remove that instruction from the prompt, so that ChatGPT can generate the plain instructions for the Docker file. Let's go down. Here you can see the notes on Dockerfile. You can just read it and follow it accordingly. And Docker compose.yml file. Here you can see two services, one for DB and another for app. So this app service is basically depends on DB. You can see depends underscore on DB, and it is exposing the port 8080, and it is using a Docker file to build the image. Next, you can see the comments for each instruction in the Docker compose file. By reading these comments, you can easily understand the content of Docker compose YML file. Next, scroll down, and here you can see the notes. You can read the notes and follow accordingly. Okay, and if you want to run the Docker compose file, use this command. So this is how we can tell ChatGPT to generate the content for Dockerfile and Docker compose file as per our requirement. Now let us go ahead and execute this same prompt in the paid version of ChatGPT, and let us see how ChatGPT generate the response. So let me copy this prompt and let us go to the paid version of ChatGPT over here. Click on the new chat. So if you click on this, if you see this GPT-5 and multiple models, then you can confirm that this is the paid version of ChatGPT. And here also you don't see the upgrade go button over here. It means this is the paid version of ChatGPT. Next, paste the prompt in the chat and then submit the prompt. Let us wait for the response of the ChatGPT. Alright, look at the response over here. Here is a production ready multi-stage Docker file and Docker Compose for a Spring Boot application with MySQL database. Scroll down and here you can see the Docker file with multi-stage. So as we have told ChatGPT to generate the content for Docker file using multi-stage mymin build, that's why you can see a lot of content over here. So by reading the comment, you can easily understand the content over here. And then Docker compose file. It has two services, one for DB and another for app. The app services depends on DB service. And if you get any issues, you can see the troubleshooting tips over here. The paid version of ChatGPT basically add more content in the response so that you will get everything you need. Okay, so this is how you can use the prompts in a ChatGPT to generate the content for Dockerfile and Docker compose file. Alright, great. I will see you in the next lecture.